And it took like a minute and a half. It took like a minute and a half just to scroll it, and nobody would let me run it on this show. But anyway, the numbers of events and topics are just great. And I'm going to hand it over to our first speaker, which is going to be, I believe, Irene Cook, who's going to talk about some of the many subjects in the, quote, nature division of this book and the website. So it's all yours, Irene.
Next, Pam, please. Next.
So this is the general mission of Regeneration, the book and the website, to put life at the center.
So this image of Earth, the first image from space, made a profound impact on me. And 50 years later, I feel even more deeply that Earth is our spaceship, with all life forms dependent on each other for existence. Regeneration, Paul Hawken's book, shows in great detail how it's possible to restore what we used to call the balance of nature, caring for each other and the planet. Next. My section of the program is supposed to focus on the nature portions of the book, but I think we need a bit of context from the introduction of the book first. Indigenous people have understood the concept of interconnection for thousands of years, and this knowledge has been lost in our industrialized world. Indigenous scholar Robin Wall Kimmerer, author of Braiding Sweetgrass, has used the term grammar of animacy, saying that using the it pronoun when we speak of plants and animals and nature robs them of their personhood. Next. Next, Pam. In recent centuries of colonialism and capitalism, the natural world has been a commodity to be exploited for profit. Forests are only valuable for the timber industry, oceans valuable for the fishing industry, and so forth, ignoring the importance of these elements in maintaining a livable planet. So there's a growing movement to recognize the legal personhood of ecosystems, to recognize their importance to the planet, and to provide accountability for their destruction. Our current economic system is based on growth, which we are finally realizing is not sustainable on a finite planet. New economic thinking suggests that we need a different economic indicator to measure our success, not growth and profit, but the well-being of people and planet. Back up, yeah, there you go. Kate Raworth's book, Donut Economics, should be a companion book to Regeneration. She proposes an economic system that provides an adequate social foundation within the ecological limits of the planet. Her message is like Paul Hawken's. The needs of people and living systems are inseparably intertwined. When we exceed the capacity of Earth, the ecological ceiling, natural disasters such as climate change are the result. Hawken has said reversing the climate crisis is an outcome. Regenerating human health, security, well-being, and the living world and justice are the purpose. Next. So the key concepts of regeneration are listed here. Equity, fairness towards each other and the living world. Reduction, stopping greenhouse gas emissions. Sequestration, reducing CO2 to pre-industrial levels. Protection, preserving and maintaining healthy, functioning living systems. Influence, changing laws and regulations. Support, helping effective change agent organizations. So next. So that with that background context and sort of a legal economic nutshell background, I want to focus on the actual chapters of regeneration pertaining to the natural world. The first one is oceans, which will open your eyes. I just can't recommend this highly enough. It'll open your eyes to a whole new world beneath the sea. And I'll just talk about a couple of these here. Marine protected areas are sort of watery wilderness areas and are an exciting climate solution. One example is the proposed Chumash Heritage National Marine Sanctuary on our coast, extending from Cambria south to Gaviota Creek, which would protect sacred submerged sites of the Chumash peoples and prime habitat for marine life. You can check out the recording of the recent 350 Santa Barbara program on this proposal at 350sb.org. Equally exciting are the other essays in this chapter describing ways to draw down and sequester carbon while improving ocean health and productivity. It was fascinating to learn about seaweed and tidal salt marshes and ecosystems that frankly we don't think about every day. So highly recommend this chapter of the book. And the next chapter is about forests. You'll find more eye-opening essays here. One thing I learned was that there are actually more than 60,000 known species of trees on the planet. We know that forests are critical to watersheds and habitat. We know they produce oxygen, cooling and cleaning the air. We know there's definitely a lot of discouraging news about loss of forests. For example, destruction of tropical forests for industrial palm oil production, and we're losing a football field sized patch of this forest every 4.5 seconds. And climate change is now causing more forest loss with insect disease and megafires. But this chapter of regeneration also gives us so much encouraging information about projects that can help protect and restore the Earth's forests, sequestering CO2 and reversing climate change, recovering existing forests, adding new trees to places not previously forested, looking to indigenous fire management, and so much more. Next, please. The wilding chapter reminds us that nature is not it someplace out there. Nature is us. Some of my favorite essays of the book are in this chapter. Perhaps the best known example of trophic cascades is the case of wolves in Yellowstone National Park. After bounty hunters removed the keystone species wolves from the park over 100 years ago, the deer and elk population was no longer kept in balance, and overpopulation led to a dramatic unraveling of the ecosystem over the next 70 years. Reintroduction of wolves has had some positive impact, but it hasn't been able to completely reverse the consequences of that 20th century slaughter. The lesson is that when we degrade the healthy functioning of an ecosystem, there are far-reaching consequences for the global ecosystem and climate. We have an example of wildlife corridors locally with the recent groundbreaking for the overpass on the 101 near Thousand Oaks, which will restore access to habitat in the Santa Monica Mountains that's been fragmented by the freeway. The essay on beavers, like the film you might have seen, Beaver Believers, is also a standout. Each of the other essays has equally fascinating information about restoring healthy connections on the planet. The final slide I'll talk about, the final chapter is about land. So much has been done globally over the past 2,000 years to alter our lands. Cities, agriculture, deforestation have dramatically altered the natural carbon cycle. This chapter describes ways to regenerate farms, forests, and grasslands to benefit all people and species. If you've seen the film Kiss the Ground on Netflix, you've been exposed to the concept of regenerative agriculture. You might also have seen the previous 350 Santa Barbara conversation about this. The idea of bringing soil back to life is growing in popularity, even among conservative farmers who would not consider themselves to be climate activists. Right here in Santa Barbara County, we have a wonderful example of composting, on a grand scale. The county landfill is pulling organic waste out of the trash and composting it on site. This process is also generating electricity and powering local homes. For information on this landfill, go to lessismore.org, or even better, schedule a tour of this impressive facility. There's so many inspiring stories in this book, it's hard to stop talking about them, but I need to turn the program over to Pam, who will talk about possibly the most important climate solution we have, electrifying everything.
So I was very happy to talk about the energy chapter and to recap its highlights. As the book points out, this is a momentous turning point in civilization because fossil fuels have brought us to the point of climate catastrophe, climate disaster all over the world, and we're seeing it unfold. And it's going away from fossil fuels that will save us, basically. So it's changing our energy system. So today, 35 billion tons per year of CO2 emissions from fossil fuels are emitted. And the book sets out the goal for 2030, 8.5 years from now, to go down to 11 billion tons per year of CO2. So that's a huge reduction. And how do we do it? There's two ways that basically, boil down to in the book. One is energy efficiency. And this is quite boring, but it's pretty interesting that 82% of CO2 emissions come from fossil fuels, but most of that energy is wasted. The US is only 2% efficient. So that is actually an opportunity. Because energy is used wastefully all over the world, says the book. We can radically reduce energy use. And just a few of the ways we can do this. We can insulate buildings, increase grid efficiency, stop methane flaring and leaks, stop leaks from idle and uncapped oil wells. And that's an issue in our county that we'll mention at the end of the program. And inherently, renewable energy is more efficient than fossil fuels. It's the production and the use of it. So this is an opportunity that needs to be really fully developed in order to do that drastic reduction in CO2 emissions. The next thing, the second thing out of these two major pathways to decarbonize is electrifying everything using wind, water, and solar power, plus battery power so that the grid is stable day and night. Just yesterday, a climate report came out from the UN, and it really emphasized how renewable energy was key, the lifeline of renewable energy. And the Secretary General of the UN gave a really good speech. I will drop into the chat a link to the speech. He talks about the 5 key things that need to be done worldwide. He's emphasizing climate justice worldwide, that technologies have to be shared and not patented, that kind of thing. And he said this. He said, it's time for leaders, public and private alike, to stop talking about renewables as a distant project of the future, because without renewables, there can be no future. I mean, that is how dire it is. And I thought that really summed it up. So we can get depressed about leaders in our country, for example, at the federal level being very, very gridlocked and not really delivering the climate package that we were hoping as yet. But it's good to kind of take solace in the fact that we do not have to leave everything to the federal government. Our state is strong, it's very wealthy, and the cities all over the world, but in the United States, have led the way. So the amount of solar power installed in just 9 US cities in the last 10 years is more than what it actually existed all over the country 10 years ago. That's just 9 cities. Many more cities have been installing solar power. So at the local level, we have more control and influence, even at the house level, our own homes. We can do this. So that fact was in this report from Environ America Research and Policy Center, and they put out the report on solar cities for this year, 2022, and the top solar cities. I wanted you to look at California. We've got a lot of solar superstars. The top cities for total solar there, they've listing Los Angeles #1 and San Diego #2. San Jose is #8. So this is the direction we have to keep going in. And they also in this report say what cities and states can do. And top of the list is you have to set a goal and you have to create a roadmap to get there. In our own county, we really don't have a very good goal or roadmap, and we need to push for that. And at the state level, there is a little bit of hopeful news, but I'll get to that in a minute. The hopeful news is also, we don't have to start from scratch. Scientists and engineers around the world have been working on this problem. They've been running the numbers. They've been plotting out timelines, and they're saying, we can do this. At Stanford University, we have Mark Jacobson's group, and they've created roadmaps to transition cities, states, and countries, most of the countries in the world, to 100% wind, water, and solar for all energy purposes. So that exists. It's doable. Even Forbes magazine, not exactly a wildly progressive outfit, says California can reliably hit 85% clean energy by 2030 without risking outages, en route to 100% clean grid. So it is starting to filter out. And our job is to just push, because we are fighting against the fossil fuel interests who do not want this to happen anytime soon. The last thing I want to emphasize from the book about energy in California is the offshore wind energy potential. The book said waters off California contain 11 times more harvestable energy than what is required by the state. So we could power 11 Californias. We're not going to do that. We're not going to use a fraction of this, but as yet we have not used any. So this is a, we're only going to use a fraction, but it's there, and it's a potential big component of the solution for moving to renewable in California. And then there was this bit of news yesterday, or the 10th, Tuesday. California energy officials have released a draft of the West Coast first roadmap for offshore wind, and they're calling for more gigawatts of electricity from offshore wind than any other US state so far. So this is a roadmap, it's a plan, and again, we have to hold them to it. And the final point from this chapter that I think is a really important thing to take away is that locally produced renewable energy can regenerate a community. So on page 200, they have a story of a village in Germany, which was just economically deteriorating, as many communities across this country are. And they decided to invest in renewable energy. And the book explains that the leaks in a community are funds that are always leaving for gas, electricity, fuel, and so forth, that don't stay in the region, that go to oligarchs, oil oligarchs in Saudi Arabia, Texas, wherever. If you can plug these leaks and power things locally and also produce local food, so through relocalization efforts, you can make yourself more secure and more financially secure. So, and revitalize your economy. So it's really important to remember this when you have the arguments about why we shouldn't do it and how expensive it is. So now I will turn this over to Sharon for the final section we're going to summarize.
I am going to talk about two chapters in the book. The first one is people. I'm just pulling out a few of the people is the section, just a few of the chapters. Indigenous people, education for girls, clean cook stoves, and I'm adding local action. Next. I wanted to introduce you, maybe some of you know, Namonte Nenkimo. She belongs to the Wangori tribe in the rainforest, and in the through the 20th century, they were pulling back farther and farther, more remote and smaller areas of their ancestral lands because the land was being exploited by people coming in. And in 1990s, land was really becoming more exploited by the oil companies and illegal loggers. Namonte was educated in the missionary schools, and she rebelled. She became an activist. She co-founded the indigenous-led Ciebo Alliance, which is 4 nations located in the rainforest in eastern Ecuador. She became the lead plaintiff in a lawsuit against the Ecuadorian government that called for the protection of 500,000 acres of Amazon rainforest from oil exploration and illegal logging. In 2019, a 3-judge panel in Ecuador ruled in their favor. And for the first time in history of the Amazon, a national government was required to conform to standards of international law and to have a consent process before lands could be ceded to oil companies. This is a legal precedent that has inspired indigenous people throughout the Amazon. Next. Here's,
Yeah.
there was the activist in the rainforest.
Yeah.
Namonte Nimkino has in the book a letter to 9 leaders. It starts, "My message to the Western world, your civilization is killing life on Earth." It's a very awesome letter, and I hope you all will get the book and read it, but I've taken one part of it out. When you say that the oil companies have marvelous new technologies that can sip the oil from beneath our lands like hummingbirds sip nectar from a flower, we know that you are lying because we live downriver from the spills. Okay, next one. Another chapter is the education of girls. This is taken from the book. There's a custom in Afghanistan of short poems called landai that are passed on orally from woman to woman. 15-year-old Lima Nizi wrote this one. "You won't allow me to go to school. I won't become a doctor. Remember this, one day you will be sick." Next. Malala. I'm sure we all recognize Malala. She's created a fund with this strives for the simple goal, 12 years of free, safe, quality education for every girl. Realizing the potential for women is the single most important pathway to planetary regeneration. Next one. Another chapter is on clean cook stoves. Clean cook stoves will reduce logging. They reduce women and girls' labor and gender-based violence. Next. One study found that by replacing traditional stoves with an improved forced draft stoves in a household can reduce 40% reduction in the average concentration of black carbon particles. Produces local employment and reduces pulmonary illnesses. Next one. Our family knows a bit about clean cook stoves because our son, Eric, and his wife, Shanat, they went to the Dominican Republic in 2013. And the Peace Corps there, that was one of their main projects, clean cook stoves. You see the lady on the left, she's stirring a pot on the first clean cook stove they make. And the young man on the right was learning the whole project with Eric so he could continue it after Eric left. Next one. And there's another on the left, another Peace Corps volunteer making the stove and the men finishing the top of the stove. Top. Okay, next one. So this stove, here's the inside of it. there's many different clean cook stoves. Dominican Republic has wood, they have forests, but they wanted a stove that would use less wood and smaller branches of wood that's very easy to collect. And then this stove it's massive and it has all these parts to it that slow the burning down and create the heat more efficiently. Next slide. And the important thing that the women wanted was a stovepipe, because it's hard to imagine, but they were cooking on an open fire in the middle of their living area. Tremendous pulmonary problems, kids had asthma, and the smoke just filled the living area and it would seep out through those open slats. So the women were very happy with the new stoves. In the book, they also have solar stoves and other things work in other parts of the world. Okay, next one. And I don't want to forget about our local actions. This one was Monday. Society of Fearless Grandmothers were holding these signs out in front of Chase Bank because Monday was the action affiliated with many different groups across the country against Chase, because Chase is the worst banker of climate chaos by far. Chase has dumped over $250 billion in fossil fuels in the last 4 years alone. And this seems to be what we're doing now locally, is joining with national actions. This artwork is beautiful. The next slides will have more close-ups. And it was sent to us in the mail, and then we put it on big pieces of cardboard. There's Irene on the left. And there's Pam on the right. But and then next slide. The last part of the book is action and connection. What do we do? Where do we start? How to make a difference? The number one guideline is the fundamental principle of regeneration. And there's 12 questions at the end of the book. I've just put a few of them here. Does the action create more life or reduce it? Does it heal the future or steal the future? Does it enhance human well-being or diminish it? In short, is the activity extractive or regenerative?
Okay, so I'm not sure what time it is. Let's see. It's 6:36, so we have time for discussion. And Julian is going to give us directions while Michelle puts us into a couple of different breakout groups.
Can we go back to the gallery view so I can see how many people there are? Good, thank you, Michelle. So there's 14 of us. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's do 3 groups of 4 or 5 each. So if you could, let's see, what did I say? 3 groups. So would Pam and Irene and Sharon, would you each lead a group? And okay. The basic idea is to give everyone a chance to speak in our book club. It's a small book club, but we all get some time to talk. So at most, say for the first round, everyone should get a chance to talk once before anybody speaks twice. So I don't know when you want us to break, Michelle, come back to, but if everyone, take no more than 2 minutes for your first comment, and then everyone will have a chance to say something. Irene?
Can you repeat the questions that we're supposed to focus on?
They are also in the chat.
Okay,
What did you learn? And the second one is what interests you?
got it. Thank you.
Okay.
And you've all just been assigned.
Good. Okay, so we'll take, how much time do you want at the end, Michelle?
Since we have about 4 to 5 people in each, maybe take 10 to 15 minutes for meaningful discussion so we don't hopefully cut off any people early. I will switch between groups to make sure I'm not going to stifle conversation.
Okay, great. So 15 minutes, you can bring us back.
Yes. Okay, if you can, please accept the opportunity. Some of you might be frozen, might have been invited to go to a breakout room. Let's see here.